Hey y'all, it's Bear, and I'm back with another reading vlog today. If you've been following my channel for the month of October, then you know that I have been posting a video a day every day for this month. So today we are going to do a little nostalgia trip. We're going to read some of my favorite books. We're going to watch some Goosebumps, go all the way back to my horror origins, so to speak. I have 6 books that I'm going to be reading today. These have been slowly trickling in over the months as I've been preparing for this video. Most of these came from thrift books or like secondhand Amazon sellers. So first we have The Witches of Byrne by Zelfa, Keatley, Snyder. This book fucking terrified me when I was in like the 3rd grade, I guess. And it's about this girl who finds a cat and she names him Worm. He's like a little teeny tiny baby cat and he's like alone in this cave. And as the cat starts to grow older, she starts to think that the cat is possessed by the devil. I guess the point of this video is to see if these things that scared me were actually scary. And if they still are scary now. I don't really know what the purpose of this is, other than nostalgia. Next, I have this bind up of The Skeleton Man duology by Joseph Bruchac. I'm just going to be reading the first one in this video, because I've never read the second one. That will come at a later time. But The Skeleton Man by Joseph Bruchac follows a young girl, what's her name? Molly, who has growing up heard the stories of the Skeleton Man. That's one of her favorite spooky legends that her dad tells her. And her parents have gone missing. So one night, this man comes to her door saying, "I'm your great uncle." Weird things start to ensue. Molly isn't sure whether this man is being honest, if he's actually the Skeleton Man come to get her. She needs to figure out what happened to her parents and escape this creepy dude who's just appeared in her house. We have 2 R.L. Stine books. We have The Phantom of the Auditorium, which was the first Goosebumps book I ever read, and I fully credit this to kickstarting my love of horror. This one is an obvious take on Phantom of the Opera, and it follows a girl and her friend who are putting on this theater production at their middle school of a play that is cursed because a student died in the past performing it. Also, like my OG copy that I had, it's kind of ripped and torn, and it's very well loved. Then we have Lights Out, which is the first Fear Street book I ever read, and this one follows Holly Flynn, who is like a junior counselor at Camp Nightwing, and vandalism is happening, right? Like these tiny acts of vandalism keep happening until people start ending up dead, and at the scene of every crime, they find a red feather. I remember it being pretty gory for Fear Street, because I read a lot of the Fear Street books from my school library, and I remember this one being very, very graphic. Granted, I was like 10 at the time, so we'll see how graphic it actually is. Then we have 2 little outliers. We have this short story collection from Apple Paperbacks called 13 Ghosts by Will Osborne. This is just spooky ghost stories. I had a copy of this that I got for 50 cents at a thrift store, and I read this thing front to back hundreds of times to the point where like the cover was falling off. I read all of these books from like ages 8 to 10, so we're going like formative developmental years. So this one I'm pulling way back from the recesses of my mind. We have Night of the Pet Zombies. This is part of the Dead Time Stories collection by A.G. Cascone. This was one of the book series that ripped off Goosebumps. You also had Shivers and like Fright Time Tales and stuff like that. This one I remember I once again got from a yard sale for like $1. I remember this one follows 2 boys who are paired up for like a school project, and it involves fertilizer. They're trying to bring plants back from the dead, but something happens and they accidentally end up resurrecting all of the dead pets from everyone in their neighborhood. So these are the 6 books I will be reading in today's video. I don't know which one to start with. How should I decide this? Should I get Will to pick a book? Will is here off camera. I need to pick the first book to read for this video. Which one? Pick a number 1 through 6.
6.
6? Okay, we're reading Night of the Pet Zombies first.
Good.
Do you want me to read this to you?
What?
Do you want me to read this to you?
You know I don't like zombies.
Will doesn't like scary things.
I don't like dead things.
Will you watch Goosebumps with me?
Sometimes dead is better.
I mean, I feel like you're almost there. The tagline says, "They're dying to meet you."
Well, you know what that quote is from.
Yeah, from Pet Sematary.
Exactly.
Which is, I feel like this is like a ripoff of Pet Sematary. Like the Goosebumps version of Pet Sematary.
That was my best friend Gwine, too.
You did good. We're reading Night of the Pet Zombies first. So, I will update you in a bit. So, same day, a couple hours later, I did change my shirt. I finished Night of the Pet Zombies. I gave it 3 stars, and I was conflicted on like how I was gonna rate this because like how do I rate books that are written for children? And I'm like, okay, well, I guess the same way that I would rate books written for children now. I feel no weirdness about rating middle grade that I currently read, middle grade that's currently being published, so why would I feel odd about rating middle grade from my childhood? As I said earlier, Dead Time Stories and Shivers and Fright Time and all of those are kind of Goosebumps. I don't want to say knockoffs, but they're Goosebumps knockoffs. So the characters in these books are very like cookie cutter cardboard cutouts that you as a kid, as kids can kind of project themselves onto. So with David and Eddie, while they do have like personality traits of being like kind of snappy at each other, it's not really like they're fleshed out characters. None of the characters are very fleshed out. What I didn't remember was how Eddie and David got the miracle life, the fertilizer. They're watching a zombie movie and this commercial comes up and they're like, oh, well, let's go check it out tomorrow. So they go to this plant store in like the bad, scary part of downtown. They keep talking about how downtown is like bad news. And they meet this man who's very, very creepy. He's like missing chunks of skin. He's like biting off his fingernails and spitting them, and then they're like crawling around on the floor. And like very clearly, like this guy is dead. The main character has like a gothy sister who's like very doom and gloom and has like a dead mynah bird. So the mynah bird is who's like leading the charge of the zombie pets. There's also a taxidermy location, which very clearly isn't gonna come up later. It does. This was just fun. It was a little bit gorier than I remember, but the writing did feel kind of stilted, and there was no character development, so ultimately I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was fun, and I will probably be reading more Dead Time stories, but it was just fine. Also, in Googling and looking for reviews of this stuff on YouTube, did you know that there was a Dead Time Stories Nickelodeon TV show with Jennifer Stone? It apparently only lasted like a season, but I do want to see if I can find it online and watch it. I know that this book was never adapted, but another couple of the books that I did read in the Dead Time stories were adapted as TV episodes. Now, it's currently around like 8:30, so I don't have much time left in the day before I have to start editing and like go to bed because I have to work tomorrow. But I think I'm gonna read 13 Ghosts by Byrne. It's like 80-page short story collection, so I will update you on this one later. Hi. It's now a couple days later. I have finished 13 Ghosts, and I usually rate short story collections based on like an average of what I thought of each story. So I'll give each story a rating, and then I will average out the amount. So this one is a solid 3 star. I'm a little concerned with how many 3 stars we're having. My favorite short stories in this one were The Phantom of the German Submarine, The Ghost of the Irish Bride, The Ghost in the Brown Satin Dress. Another fun fact about all of these is these are very well documented historical ghost paranormal encounters. So a lot of these you can look them up after you read the story and get like the full scoop on it and see like the newspaper clippings from back when the hauntings first started occurring, whenever they were first documented. So it was very interesting. It was a very interesting reading experience, and reading it as a kid, obviously I was terrified. Reading it as an adult, some of the stories did creep me out. The Ghost in the Brown Satin Dress specifically was very creepy. But reading it as an adult, it was interesting because I could do Google searches and check out the stories and stuff like that. So I'm giving it a 3 star. I think it was fun. It was not as scary as I remember it, but the nostalgia was nice, and I remembered most of the stories. I'm gonna go to bed because it's like 3:30 in the morning, and I have to work tomorrow. But I will update you whenever I have picked out the next book, or we're going to do like a fun activity. So, I have my Camp Arawak shirt on, and we are going to discuss Skeleton Man. I really enjoyed this one, more so than the other ones, in the sense that this one so far has been the one that has scared me the most. So, if we're rating it on writing, and does it hold up compared to middle grade books published today, I don't necessarily think it does. I feel like this very short, like 120 page format of middle grade of yesteryear is very hard to compare to modern day middle grade where they're like 300 pages. But this one did scare me. I did enjoy it, and I do enjoy Joseph Bruchek's writing style, so I did end up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I appreciated a lot of what this did. I liked having a teacher in this book who listens to Molly's concerns, and it's not like all adults are useless, it's just most adults are useless. I like that Molly is scared, and she's not afraid to admit that she's scared of this creepy ass man who locks her in her room every night, but she's still gonna do her best to find her parents and get away. And no spoilers, but I really, really enjoyed this one, and I do want to read the sequel now. I do want to read part 2, so that maybe will come later. Moving on, though, I have decided to go from that to Goosebumps. We're going to be reading The Phantom of the Auditorium, which was the first Goosebumps book I ever read. Made me fall in love with R.L. Stine, and I know that The Phantom of the Auditorium has a television adaptation, so we will also be watching the episodes based on this book. As the 2 characters named Brooke and Zeke, which, fun fact, I did not know how to pronounce Zeke whenever I read this book, so I read his name as Zeke. So it was Brooke and Zeke. And they're in this play, and Zeke has been given the lead role of the Phantom. Zeke's also a practical joker. He likes to scare people. Brooke thinks he's getting a little too scary, but then they realize that it's not Zeke who's doing all the practical jokes. It's the Phantom. I'm off today. Will's not here. I'm gonna watch some scary shit and listen to the rain and read spooky books, and it's gonna be a good time. I do miss Will, though. I miss Will a lot. Hi, it's a little bit later. I am showered. I washed my hair. I have the episode of Phantom of the Auditorium queued up on Netflix, and I finished reading the book. I will wait to talk about the book until after I watch the show. I have pizza here. I've got some soda. I got my blanket right here. We're gonna have like a good movie watching night. I wanted you to meet some of my stuffed animals, some of my friends that I have had with me since this time period that we are revisiting. I had all 3 of these from my childhood. This is Mr. Fuzzums. I've talked about him a little bit on my channel. This is my best friend. This was my stuffed animal, my teddy bear that went with me everywhere. You can see he has a missing ear and some eyes scratched out because I had a dog, a Shih Tzu, who was jealous that she was not allowed to sleep with me in bed, so she came into the bedroom one night and ripped up all of my stuffed animals. Mr. Fuzzums was the one survivor. And we have Yellow Bunny, that's her name. She was in my Easter basket one year, I think in the 2nd or 3rd grade. The Easter Bunny, gave us Easter baskets, and Yellow Bunny was in there. And then last we have Garcia. My brother and I had quite the Beanie Baby collection because my grandmother, my mom's mom, her name was Ada is what I called her, Ada believed that Beanie Babies were going to be worth a ton of money. They were going to be collectibles. So Ada worked at this thrift store in town and would get us Beanie Babies because she was convinced they were going to be worth a ton of money. This was the first Beanie Baby that she ever got me. Unfortunately, Ada passed away whenever I was very young. It was around the time that my brother was born, so I would have been 3 or 4. And this is the one thing that I have to remember her by. Because I have these 3 friends, around this time period in my life, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna watch some Goosebumps together. So I'm gonna turn off the lights and we're gonna press play and we're gonna get started. Oh no. So, I finished watching the show. It's about 20 minutes later because the episode was only 20 minutes long. So, The Phantom of the Auditorium, as I said, is about these kids named Brooke and Zeke who are going to perform this play at their school. It's the first time that the play has been performed in over 70 years because the year that the school opened in 1923 they were originally going to do the production, and the person playing the Phantom went missing. So they believe the play is cursed. Flash forward to Brooke and Zeke's time, and someone is trying to sabotage the play. They are leaving paint cans in Zeke's locker after writing threatening messages on the scenery. They're swooping in from the rafters and like shaking Brooke and scaring her. And what R.L. Stine does in this book, the reason that I gave this book a 5-star over the other ones getting 3 is because I truly believe that R.L. Stine is a master of like misdirection and cliffhangers. Every chapter in a Goosebumps book ends on a cliffhanger. And I like that this one keeps you guessing and gives you multiple suspects. It was never really clear to me reading this book for the first time when I was 9 years old who the Phantom was. Flash forward to the latter half of this book, Brooke and Zeke discovered that the person creating all of this mischief, starting all of these like bad things in the theater, is Emil the night janitor, who is actually a homeless man who's been living underneath the stage at the bottom of the school through the trapdoor the Phantom is supposed to appear through. But R.L. Stine, being a master at twist endings, you have him disappear. They're like, okay, the homeless man got away. Flash forward to opening night. Brooke is there doing the play. She's playing Esmeralda, the theater owner's daughter. If you can't tell, this is just the Phantom of the Opera. So the Phantom comes out and he starts talking. He's diverting from the script. He starts talking about how 70 years ago, more than 7 decades ago, he was supposed to play this very role on this very stage. And then he fell into the abyss, and he points to the trapdoor. And now he is back to play the role of a lifetime that he's been waiting 7 decades to play. And the audience goes wild because they're like, oh my god, this is amazing. And whenever he goes to take the bow, Brooke is like, who the fuck is this? Because I know this isn't Zeke. So she reaches up and she pulls the mask off of his face, and he falls back into the trapdoor. Zeke comes on stage before a curtain call and asks Brooke, what happened? Someone knocked me out. I don't know who that was. So the very last page, we discover that it was Brian the whole time. Brian was the kid who was supposed to play the Phantom in the 1920s production of the show. I haven't read this book since I was 9 years old. I'm 25 now, and I still remember the twist ending. I remember all of the twists and turns of this book. I think that speaks volumes for R.L. Stine as a writer. I would definitely recommend it, and I gave it 5 stars. We finally have a 5-star. We finally have a 5-star for the vlog. I don't want this to turn into a Goosebumps reading vlog, which I would love to do. If you want to see a reading vlog series where I reread Goosebumps books, let me know. But we're going to move on to the next book. To match my shirt, I've chosen to go with The Witches of Worm. This book terrified me. It's about a girl whose name I can't remember, Jessica, who finds this cat and kind of adopts it and takes it into her house, and she names it Worm because whenever it's a baby it looks like a worm. However, weird things start to go on, and Jessica is convinced that Worm is the devil. You can see the cover. So I will update you in a bit whenever I have read The Witches of Worm, but I'm probably going to watch some more Goosebumps because why not? Hi. So, I have finished Witches of Worm, and I am bouncing back and forth on whether I want to give it a 4 or a 5-star. I automatically went to dock points for outdated language. I believe this book was written in the 70s or 80s. This book was published in 1972, so there are very outdated words in here. There's outdated thinking. There's some instances of fat phobia. So I want to be clear in saying that, like, I recognize and acknowledge that, and all of these things are bad, and this book did not age well. Granted, that content shouldn't have been included in the first place. So I don't think it holds up today, and I would not recommend this to people today. On the fear side, this book did scare me, but for different reasons. As I said, I believe I described this book in the intro of this video as like a girl thinks her cat is possessed by the devil. But it's so much more than that. This deals with like the latchkey kids and implied like abuse and like physical assault with children, and like this deals with a lot of like heavier topics that are looked at through the lens of like a 12-year-old character, and this book feels like you are looking at these things through a 12-year-old's perspective. The voice is very much there, but whenever I was a kid and I read this, I was convinced that the cat was like possessed by the devil. I was 100% convinced this cat is the devil. Reading this as an adult, I am not so sure if the cat is actually evil or if our protagonist is dealing with like mental illness. Just the way that Jessica describes everything going on in her life with her mother's new boyfriend and her mother talking about how she doesn't really want her, and like adults in her life making weird comments about her being a kid and her best friend leaving her, and all of the manipulation that as a child reading it I thought was done through the cat being a demon. I thought the cat was like talking to her and saying like, you should do these bad things so that you'll stay out of trouble. But as an adult, I'm questioning, was it the demon cat or was it the little girl working through like trauma? I'm gonna give it a 4. Now, moving on to the last book of this vlog, one that I am the most excited for, and I am hoping is another 5-star. Lights Out. So I want to see if this book is as gory as I remember. That's what I'm looking for with this one. So recently I reread The Prom Queen and The First Evil. Both of these are Fear Street books as well. I remember them being a lot gorier than they actually are, and I'm not sure if that's going to be the case with Lights Out or not, because Lights Out is kind of the Friday the 13th of the Fear Street. It's a summer camp slasher. There were a couple of Fear Street deaths that I remember very specifically. This one, a girl drowns in the showers at school. They like fill up. I believe in the sequel, her boyfriend's hand gets cut off. Fear Street got graphic for me reading it as a 4th grader. Granted, it was nothing compared to what I was watching on TV with my family, but reading it in a book there was something a little more visceral about it. The scene that I remember in this book, the one death scene that I remember, was a counselor's necklace. She has like an owl pendant necklace, and it got like caught in a pottery wheel or something, and it like ground her face off like into pulp. I remember the word pulp being used very distinctly to describe that. So we will read this tonight and we will see if it's just as gory as I remember. Hi, it's me from a couple of weeks into the future. I finished this experiment like a good little bit ago and I just never filmed an outro for it. So we're going to chat very briefly about the 6 books that I read this week. I would say that this is probably a good ranking for my level of like personal enjoyment. This one was just like very cringy and very fun. Like it was bad, but like in like a B movie $5 bin Walmart bad way. It was fun. It was entertaining, and I enjoyed it. And I do want to, like I said, check out more of the Dead Time story books and see if I can find other ones that I read. It wasn't like Goosebumps or Fear Street where I wanted to read every single one. I would just like randomly pick these up for a nickel at yard sales. 13 Ghosts, I think, was probably the biggest disappointment. I do think that some of the stories in this collection hold up. However, a lot of them were just not a good time. I gave this one, like I said, overall, I think a ranking of 3, with like maybe 3 stories being 5 stars in the 13 story collection. And it was fine. It wasn't my favorite. It was just not as scary or as entertaining as I remember it being. I remember it being very entertaining. I remember the stories being a lot longer. I was shocked whenever I received it in the mail and it was like this thin. Would recommend it just if you are very, very compelled to pick it up. It's not like a must read, but it's a fun time. Skeleton Man by Joseph Bruchac. Just as creepy as I remember it being. Definitely excited to read the second. My only disappointment was that this edition does not have the illustrations, and I can't find an edition that has the illustrations. I also like that like our child protagonist, even though she has missing parents, like there's still a capable adult who can help her, because I feel like in so many like young reader stories, like middle grade and below, the adults are just useless. So I was glad to see that like our main character did have an adult that, even though she was kind of goofy at first, like believed in her and can like, I like that she could turn to an adult in her life. I think that's very important. We need to teach children that like not all adults are useless. Most of them are, yes, and most of us don't know what the fuck we're doing, but not all of us are terrible. Then we have Lights Out, which I remember being so much gorier and having so many more deaths than it actually did. This is the common thread with a lot of Fear Street books that I'm currently rereading right now. You had, I think, 1 death and then a bunch of accidents. Granted, this death is one of the most iconic in the whole franchise. Like, getting your face just ground off by a pottery wheel is pretty fucking gory. For what we got, I was pretty pleased. It's not as graphic as I remember. It's not the most compelling Fear Street book, but it's one of the ones that solidly sticks out in my brain as being like a better one. It's like R.L. Stein's Friday the 13th, which are two of my favorite things, so you can't fault that. Then we have The Witches of Worm by Zelfa Keatley Snyder. Like I said, this book is very dated. However, reading it back as an adult, as I said in the vlog, I thought whenever I was a kid, Die Hard, this cat was possessed by the devil. This cat was a demon sent straight from hell. As an adult, I'm like, this is child abandonment issues. This is depression. This is trauma manifesting itself in a lying little girl. This one is sticking in my head so much, and I have problems with it because it's a very dated book. I think it's important to look at things that we enjoy critically. You can enjoy something and still acknowledge its faults. I think that's very important to recognize. And I did enjoy this. Does it have faults? Yes. Do all of these books have faults? Absolutely. But this scared the shit out of me. And then finally we have the one I had the most fun with, and obviously that's Goosebumps. That's Phantom of the Opera, the first Goosebumps book I ever read. I think that this is one of the best Goosebumps books, and I'm glad that this was the first Goosebumps book I ever read. I also want to acknowledge that while a lot of these books are not diverse at all, they're all very straight, white, cis, able-bodied, neurotypical protagonists. I am grateful that modern horror has given a space for those voices, that the authors have carved out spaces for their voices. That's something that they've fought very hard for, and I think that's something that we don't really talk about as much as we should. So that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe and hit the bell and all that good shit, as well as answering the comment question of the day. Comment question of the day: what was your favorite horror book that you read whenever you were a kid? If you don't have an answer, you don't want to answer, you don't have the spoons, just leave me an emoji, preferably a yellow heart or a smiley face emoticon, so I know you made it all the way until the end of the video. Alright, I hope you have a wonderful whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you tomorrow for another video. Thank you for watching. Okay, cool. Bye. Boom.